I'm Katherine Schwab. I'm an assistant managing editor at Forbes covering technology, and I am so excited to be here with Gabriel Stengel, the co-founder and CEO of Rogo, which is building AI tools for Wall Street. Gabriel, thanks for joining me.
Katherine, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Great. So let's just start with the basics. What does Rogo do? How are you helping bring AI to Wall Street?
Rogo is an AI analyst for finance. We take cutting edge AI researchers and sit them next to financial experts. I was an M&A banker at Lazard. Our team is filled with folks who worked at Goldman, Blackstone, and Apollo, people who understand real world financial services use cases. There was $3.5 trillion of M&A and deal making last year that was done in tools that were made in the 80s, PowerPoint and Excel. We believe that AI will allow everyone to be a lot more insightful, to be smarter, to do a lot of this busy work more quickly, and focus on the more strategic, judgment-oriented work that investors, bankers want to be doing.
Okay, so what makes Rogo's AI models especially tuned for finance? Why not just use ChatGPT or Claude?
The same way that, when you're hiring someone who's gone to a great undergraduate institution, the first thing you want to do is teach them about how you work, the tools that you use, the data sets that you use, and the way you think. What we need to do when working with investment banks is take these great models like ChatGPT and Claude and teach them how to think like an investor, how to use the data that an investor uses, whether it's public company financials or private company data like PitchBook, and then teach them how to do the same kind of outputs, the PowerPoints, the Excel models, and so on. And so we actually take those cutting edge models and we train them to more specifically do financial workflows. And so we have a lot more data, we're more accurate, it's lower latency, and it can actually address the pain points that these professionals have much more quickly because we can take a targeted approach to creating the technology.
Okay, so when you're saying you're feeding uh, this data into these, can you be more specific about like what that process actually looks like? Is
Yeah,
it
I mean,
specific to each client or yeah?
we partner broadly with FactSet, with Refinitiv, with CapIQ, PitchBook, Preqin, Crunchbase, just to name a few. So our AI agent has access to all of those tools. So if you go in and say, hey, Rogo, tell me about a company like Perplexity, we can actually go through and look at Crunchbase and PitchBook data to tell you the fundraising history and give you data that you trust. If you say, great, put this into a PowerPoint template, it can go and look at the last PowerPoint you made on a company and follow that exact same workflow and template too. And so we both connect to a company's internal data sets, their SharePoint, their precedent workflows, as well as the third-party data and content that they already know and trust.
Okay, so I'd love to hear more about your time at Lazard. How many hours were you working every week?
I loved my
Ballpark.
work at Lazard, honestly. I mean, it's very interesting work. You put a 22-year-old in a room with the CEO of Fortune 500 companies. I didn't get to say a whole lot in my first few years, but I got to see how they thought and how they thought about huge deals. And it was crazy to me that, a lot of these deals were powered by analyses that I was doing late at night in old, archaic tools. And people spend a lot of money on bankers and they spend a lot of money on data, and really what they want is insight or something needle moving, right? You want something that's going to change the strategy of what you're doing. And it was very hard to ever elicit that for clients when you're spending so much time, in a data room or doing the process work. And so it was very rewarding, and I got to see a lot of what could be going on. And then I also got to live the reality of, hey, what actually happens behind the scenes.
How did that time in your career lay the groundwork for Rogo?
I saw firsthand that a lot of the work I could be doing could be completely augmented or replaced by AI. And so when GPT-3 came out, I was using it a ton. I was developing little tools. I was both a banker, but then I also was on their sort of software and data team trying to figure out internal use cases. I'd actually, in undergraduate life, published a paper on AI assistance for finance. And so at Lazard, they had kind of staffed me on some of these exploratory projects. And when GPT-3 came out, it became really clear that no longer was a managing director going to have to ping me at 11 p.m. and ask for revenue multiples on a company. They were going to be able to do that directly themselves. And so that's when we left to get started building Rogo. It was, far beyond the point where these tools were actually capable of doing that yet, but the writing was on the wall that, front office work was going to get more and more automatable on Wall Street.
Okay, interesting. You did use the word replace. So I'm curious, do you see tools like this fully replacing junior bankers?
I think tools are going to replace work and workflows. I don't know if they're going to replace people. The best bankers on Wall Street are not the best bankers because they're way better at Excel than everyone else. They're better because they have relationships. They can think commercially. They know who to call to get a deal done. A lot of the work that takes place now, yeah, sure, it'll be replaced, but it'll transform and allow people to focus on more strategic, more interesting work. And the org structures might look very different, but I think net new, if you can make more money on better margins, you'll probably continue growing and continue hiring. And at the end of the day, these are not institutions that are going to kind of just take a step back and be like, oh, we can grow so fast, but instead we're just going to, lean the team and return more to shareholders. No, they want to be aggressive and take market share. They want to compete.
What were those early experiments like that you were doing with AI kind of pre ChatGPT? And where was it falling short, and how have you seen this technology kind of develop over the last few years?
The early experiments were like you would, ask a question, you get an answer that looks right, and then you would take a closer look and you would say, "This is absolute gibberish nonsense." The trajectory of AI in finance, I don't think is that different from the trajectory of AI broadly, which was 2, 3 years ago. ChatGPT was helpful for writing poems in the style of Roald Dahl or Shakespeare and like doing kind of like fun stuff. And then over the last year and a half, you said, hey, maybe this is helpful for SQL or for copywriting. And today I can use ChatGPT for just about anything, right? It's a thought partner. I can tell it about my personal life. I can ask it for help drafting an email. And I think that's what we're seeing in finance too, where the sort of breadcrumbs were there that it could be helpful, that it was starting to think. It was the first time in human history you could say, wow, that is a thing capable of thoughtfulness that's not a human. But it wasn't really that useful. And now, as the plumbing's been getting done, as the models have become smarter, as they've been able to connect to the right data sources, integrate into the right systems, I think there's very few workflows that won't be able to get automated by these sorts of tools and models.
How did you solve the hallucination problem? If to take your example of like, instead of a senior partner having to ping a low-level analyst, like what are the revenue multiples on this company at 11 p.m. at night? Like, is it good enough for that? Is it good enough for kind of a full report? And what are there trust barriers there in terms of double checking to make sure it's
There was
right?
one instance when I was an investment banking analyst when I think I sent out materials that had the complete wrong number for the share price of a public company, and it went to a company's CEO. That was a human error, right? That was a human hallucination. And I lost trust with my associate. And the next time my associate, she was great and she checked a lot of my work. And eventually I earned her trust back and could be autonomous. These tools are probably already more capable than I was as a junior banker. And maybe I wasn't a great junior banker. They still hallucinate. I mean, there's no solving it. It's like saying, can we solve every, car crash through self-driving cars? No, but we can get to a point where we trust them. They obviously add value. We still want to check them, and we need to integrate them into the way we work, the way that we integrate humans and human error into the way that we work.
Okay, so walk me through kind of a new workflow that would not have been possible when you were an analyst, like with a specific example. I'm trying to kind of get at like, what are those kind of specific tasks beyond just kind of getting
Yes.
answers to like, how much does this public company stock trade for?
Imagine a year ago when Dylan Field was thinking about taking Figma public and someone got wind of that and you're an MD at Goldman Sachs or whatever bank ended up, leading that IPO. You say, hey, we need to get in front of Dylan in 24 hours and pitch him on why we should take Figma public. That deck used to take a week or 2 weeks to create. That bake-off deck, it was coined or termed. You have to put together the precedence analysis. What is Figma going to be worth? What's the story that you want to tell to Wall Street and the investors? What's a draft of the S1? That takes a while to do. Now someone can go into a system like Rogo and say, hey, who are the comps? Who are the peers? How do they trade? What's the story that might resonate today on Wall Street? Can you draft all of those materials in 30 seconds so that I can go and iterate and be done within 24 hours so that I can get in front of the Figma management team before anyone else does? That's what's happening.
Was there a kind of light bulb moment for you when you decided to start a company based on this idea?
No, I mean, I wish I was, had been prescient and just knew this was all going to happen. I was really excited about the technology. I've always been a kind of technologist at heart, and GPT-3 felt like magic. And the work that I was doing in investment banking did not feel like magic. And I thought there was a really clear opportunity to kind of bridge this coming technology with the work that I was doing. I had no idea how fast it was going to go. I had no idea, all the use cases that would emerge. And I think it was sort of a story of right person, right place, right time. I was passionate about the technology. I had the investment banking experience. I lived in that world, and so I was able to, connect with the right people to get started. And then it's a game of making sure you make the right product bets and make the right bets on what you're going to build. But it was not a I did not sort of sit from an armchair and envision the world we'd be in now 3 years ago.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but you started the company before kind of the big ChatGPT moment. So, what was it like in those early days, kind of before everyone woke up?
Yeah, it was horrible. It was I felt like
Okay.
I was selling snake oil, right? Like it's like you say, hey, AI is now capable of thinking. It's going to be able to do so much of the work you're doing. Why don't you try this tool? And people go, What on earth are you talking about? ChatGPT was a huge educational moment for the world. GPT-3 was out. And so that was the catalyst for me. I was, a lot of people saw it coming before GPT-3. GPT-3 was the moment I went, wow, this is going to be a very capable tool and technology. But the world hadn't seen that yet. And I think partly what ChatGPT did, the consumer tool, is now more and more people were using it in their daily sort of personal life and starting to see how profound the impact would be. I think that was enormously helpful for us, for enterprise, for industries to think about adopting the technology.
What were those early pitch meetings like with investors, kind of pre-ChatGPT?
I still shudder to think about the deck we actually used for our pre-seed round. We didn't call anything a chatbot. We didn't call anything AI because we thought it was kind of cringy and AI sounded a little bit like snake oil. We called it a natural language interface instead of a chatbot, which is the worst, least salesy, marketable term you could possibly think of. Um, and so it wasn't really, it didn't resonate, and we didn't know how to sell it. And partly what we knew was, hey, we know what the financial workflows are and we understand the technology. And what ChatGPT and AI did for the world was teach everyone how to sell it and teach everyone how to apply it. And so then as that was taking off, we were able to, take our unique experience and our unique insights and apply it to this vertical.
When did you feel like you kind of found that product market fit and started to build that momentum post
You know,
ChatGPT?
we when we first started deploying the current version of our tool, because we went through a lot of iterations, the current version of our tool, and it just started getting a lot of use, right? Like you just saw that something that investment bankers, juniors, and senior folks were using every day to supplement and replace some of the work they were doing. And I remember one of the magic moments I had was when an enterprise client came to me and said, "Hey, Gabe, the web app version of Rogo is great, but we need a mobile app. Our senior MDs are asking for a mobile app. They need a native iPad kind of UI and integration because they need it on the go." And I thought to myself, well, I barely knew what MDs did when I was a junior banker. I was not expecting it to cater to both senior bankers and junior bankers. And the fact that I'm feeling this pull by users to get to use this thing that makes them smarter, I mean, that was a real kind of light bulb moment for me. And that was probably, call it 18 months ago or so.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because a lot of what I've read about the company and my understanding was that this was kind of targeted toward junior bankers and analysts. So, but it sounds like many more senior people are using this. So, what's the product roadmap look like to kind of penetrate every level of investment bank?
Our goal is to be the best analyst on your team, right? The best analyst on your team is someone you can reach via calling them. You can text them, you can send them an email and Outlook and ask for a deliverable. That's the most natural way to work with a coworker. We think that's going to be the most natural way to work with an AI analyst. And for me, I want to be the tool and the teammate that is as kind of seamless as working with a real junior banker. And if I'm a managing director, there's going to be a whole category of questions where I'm just going to think I'm going to ask Rogo instead. I'm going to ask Rogo in order to get these results more quickly. And then there's going to be a whole category of work where it's more helpful for me to engage with a human and to sort of have an intellectual sparring partner where I don't need to turn to Rogo. But our roadmap is, how do we do the analysis that takes so much time and kind of informs the more thoughtful work that senior and junior bankers do.
And tell me a little bit about your business model and your customers
Yeah.
right now.
So we sell a co-pilot like product, right? It helps with workflows, it helps with PowerPoint, it helps with Excel, it helps with research, and we sell it per seat to some of the world's largest investment banks. On top of that, we will soon be selling full work plot products. So the ability to click a button and get a full, company profile page of a target acquisition you're looking at, or the ability to click a button and get a full working DCF model for a company too. But right now we're still in the world of selling the co-pilot.
Got it. And so when you say a full work product, do you mean like a new app, like a separate app or a website, or what will that look like?
I mean, like a deliverable. Like if I think about, what are the work deliverables that you might create in your day to day? One might be a PowerPoint page on a company. Another one might be an Excel model that models out the future cash flows of a company. Another one might be an earnings summary that you email out to your team. I don't just want to be the tool that you use to do research as you assemble those materials. I want to be able to know exactly what you're doing in your day to day so you can go in and a button and generate that work product that before might have taken you a week or 2 weeks of work.
Got it. Okay. So have you found that large banks are building their own internal competitors to what you offer? I mean, they obviously can come buy your tool, or they could build their own because this is built off of basically commodity large language models. So do you see that as a source of competition?
So I would say two things. One is the most sophisticated institutions are doing all of the above. They're trying tools, they're adopting tools, they're building their own. We're still in, minute one of inning one of generative AI. It's so early, and the best institutions are being very thoughtful and experimental. I would say we have a unique advantage in that, we see the scale of not just 1,000 bankers or 1,000 investors using the tool. We get the feedback of tens of thousands, of hundreds of institutions, and that compounds into both a better model, more workflows, and a better product experience.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Who do you see as your biggest competitors then?
When we're selling, there's all sorts of tools that address pretty minute point solutions, right? So there's all sorts of tools that can just cover, hey, I can just do diligence, or I can just look at benchmarking a bunch of credit agreements. What we tend to see is that clients want a solution that is one platform that connects to all their data and understands all their workflows. And really, there's very few people, if anyone in market, who's able to offer that for finance. And so, as you said, often there are internal tools working on all sorts of things. I think most folks see us as additive additionally, and there's less of a kind of direct one-to-one comparison for what we're doing, frankly.
I'm curious about the role of the junior banker given this technology. We talked a little bit about, does this replace those people? But I also, I am not a junior banker, so I don't know. But I imagine that the practice of building a revenue model or pulling together all of this information would be like a really good way to learn how to be an investment banker. So I'm curious, kind of from a high level, what you think about the problem this will create in terms of training people, and what those kind of early years within this industry will look like if suddenly that can all be fully outsourced to AI.
Look, I think there's a lot of talk about junior banker anxiety, about workflow replacement, and they're not gonna have to spend hundreds of hours in Excel and PowerPoint anymore. I don't think very many junior bankers complain that they might not have the opportunity to move around logos on a PowerPoint slide. I think there's a huge amount that they can do that's going to be thoughtful that these models won't replace. And at the end of the day, finance, like a lot of knowledge work industries, is an apprenticeship model. You need to learn from a mentor. You need to learn from someone who's done the reps in front of you. And the problem with banking right now is there's so much grunt work that there's so many junior bankers that for every one MD that could be a mentor, there's maybe 100 junior bankers, right? Like that model doesn't work right now for learning as is. And I think what you'll see is as folks can focus on the more human work and actually learn, you'll get a lot more actual learning of what's important as opposed to learning of, all of the macros and all of the shortcuts inside of Excel, which is not really what it takes to be a great investment banker.
So, what's your plan for the next year and what challenges are you focused on right now?
I think within the next 12 to 24 months, we will see these agents and Rogo specifically able to create almost all of the work products that junior investors, junior bankers have to do and sort of spend inordinate amount of time doing. And so for us, that means we're continuing to push the boundary of the types of work AI models are able to do in finance, connecting to more data sources that our clients want, creating more types of outputs that our clients want, and continuing to embed deeper and deeper into the institutions that we partner with.
Moonshot, 10 years from now, how do you think banking and finance is going to look different because of AI?
I think it's a much bigger market and a much bigger industry. There's, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of businesses in the US and abroad that can't afford to pay Goldman Sachs a fee to raise money or afford to pay, Lazard a fee to sell themselves. There's a long tail of businesses that don't get access to these, sort of rich man's financial services of M&A, advisory work, and so on. And I think as we are able to help augment and replace that work, it's going to open up a huge portion of the market that can actually be served by these institutions too, and it should actually grow the pie. And so I think 10 years from now you'll see private markets that transact more quickly and are more liquid because people can fundraise more effectively and they can sell themselves or buy companies more effectively too. And I think as you see more and more not just AI bankers but AI native banks, you'll see a model of the world that looks a little bit more like high frequency trading in public markets rather than 22-year-olds in Excel and PowerPoint at 3 a.m. as it is in private markets.
Totally fascinating. Gabriel, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.